You know, if you point to like a single coffee cup on your desk and you just say there is one cup, it feels so binary.
Right. It's clean.
Yeah, it's clean. We treat the number one as this absolute foundation of simplicity. It's like the very first conceptual block we hand to toddlers when they are learning to categorize the world.
Yeah.
But then you read the theological works of someone like Ibn al-Arabi, and that universally understood simple concept of one suddenly opens up into this terrifying philosophical abyss.
It really does. I mean, it forces a completely different cognitive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
When you step into the world of classical Islamic thought, specifically these texts we're exploring today on this deep dive that dissect Ibn al-Arabi's views, you realize that counting to one in any true absolute sense is perhaps the hardest thing a human brain can attempt.
Right, and I want to set the stage for how these sources operate, because they don't read like poetry or typical religious dogma.
Got it all.
They read like mathematical proofs. Like, we are looking at arguments born out of a tradition that demands rigorous proof for every single claim it makes about the divine.
You're referring to Kalam, which is the Islamic discipline of scholastic theology.
Okay.
And it is essentially the science of defending the faith using rigorous dialectical logic.
Right.
The philosophers and theologians in these texts, they weren't interested in just saying, you must believe God is one because the text says so.
Right, like just take my word for it.
Exactly. They wanted to mathematically and logically break down the mechanics of existence to prove that the universe literally could not function under any other framework.
Well, let's start right there with the underlying logical tension, because we usually assume that saying God is one is just a simple declaration of faith, like you just choose to believe it. But these theologians start with this famous thought experiment to prove that it is undeniable logic. Let's look at the proof of mutual hindrance.
Okay.
They ask us to imagine a hypothetical scenario where there are two gods, and they focus their attention on a hypothetical man named Zed.
Poor Zayd is always the philosophical test subject in these ancient texts.
He really is, yeah.
So the scenario goes like this. Imagine one of these gods wants Zayd to move.
Okay.
And at that exact same millisecond, the other god wants Zayd to stay perfectly still.
Oh, I see.
Because both are theoretically absolute all-powerful deities, their wills must be executed.
Right.
But they are asking the universe to accommodate contradictory states of physics.
Right, because Zayd cannot physically be in motion and at rest at the same exact time.
No.
Like, the universe just doesn't have the bandwidth to render that paradox, so we know they can't both get their way.
And they also can't compromise either.
What do you mean?
Well, if they negotiate and say, okay, Zayd moves today and he stays still tomorrow, then neither of them possesses an absolute overriding will.
Ah.
They're both suddenly limited by the existence of the other, which means neither meets the definition of an omnipotent God.
Wow, okay.
And furthermore, they can't both fail because then they're both weak and, again, not gods.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like having two co-CEOs with absolute magical veto power trying to drive a single car in opposite directions at the exact same time.
Yes, exactly.
You literally cannot have two absolute steering wheels. The car just tears itself apart or it doesn't move at all.
Right.
The very existence of a functioning, moving universe logically necessitates a single driver.
That visualization really hits the core of the mutual hindrance proof. The one whose will is executed is the true God, and the other is exposed as a lesser entity.
Yeah.
And this realization naturally pushes these scholars to ask a much harder question.
Which is what?
If logic dictates a single driver, what actually is the nature of that driver?
Oh, okay.
So the scholar Ali al-Mursafi provides this fascinating framework in our text. He divides the concept of one into 4 distinct categories to show how unique divine oneness really is.
I found this structural breakdown incredible. Like, let's build these 4 categories from the ground up to really understand the mechanics of what they are arguing.
Sure.
We can start with the most dependent form of one.
Right, so the 4th category is something that takes up no space. It's completely indivisible, but absolutely needs a container to exist.
Okay.
The text categorizes this as an accident or an attribute.
Right.
Think of the concept of the color red or a specific temperature.
Oh, I get it.
You can't chop redness in half, and it doesn't occupy physical volume on its own.
Right.
But it cannot exist in a void.
Right.
It needs an apple or a car or a piece of cloth to carry it into reality.
So redness relies on the physical world to manifest. It is a one that is entirely dependent.
Exactly. Moving up one level, the 3rd category is something that does take up space, is indivisible, and also needs a container.
Okay.
This is defined as an atom or a foundational particle. It occupies a microscopic point in reality.
Yeah.
You can't divide it any further without destroying it, but it still exists within the larger container of the universe's spatial dimensions.
That is like the ultimate microscopic building block.
Right.
Which leads to the second category, right? The macroscopic block. Something that takes up space, is divisible, and needs a container.
And that is a body.
Like a rock or a tree.
A rock, a tree, a human being, a planet. We take up room, you can split us into parts, and we exist within the container of space and time.
Yeah.
We are the most composite, fragile versions of one.
Wow.
We only call a human one person out of convenience, but really we are a collection of millions of moving parts.
Which isolates the first category, the ultimate one, which the text argues is the only true definition of God.
Precisely. The first category is the one that takes up absolutely no space, is completely indivisible,
Yes.
and needs no container whatsoever.
Right.
It is entirely self-sustaining, independent of dimension, independent of time, and independent of location.
Let's push on the implications of that for a second, because if God requires no container and takes up no space, that fundamentally alters how we imagine the divine.
He does.
Like, God isn't a massive entity sitting inside the universe because the universe is a container.
That's entirely the point of the categorization. To imagine God as a very large being somewhere up in the sky is to put God into category 2.
A body.
Exactly. A body that takes up space and needs the universe to hold it. Elmer Safi's logic forces the reader to strip away all physical dimensions.
Okay, so the math on God being the singular containerless entity is incredibly clean.
Yeah.
But if the logic of the Zaid thought experiment is so undeniable and the 4 categories make it this obvious, how does a flawed human mind ever hope to grasp that clean math without just projecting its own desires?
Right.
Like, why does the text spend so much time explaining that humans constantly invent multiple gods?
Because human error, according to Ibn al-Arabi and these scholars, isn't usually a failure of broad sweeping logic.
Okay.
We don't usually fail at the macro level. We fail at the micro level.
Interesting.
Our polytheism often comes down to microscopic, insidious errors in how we use math and grammar to describe reality.
But wait a second. Many major world religions rely on pantheons or trinities. Are you saying this specific text views those not just as moral or theological failures, but as literal math errors?
Yes, it explicitly frames them as mathematical impossibilities.
Wow.
The text explores why certain statements are considered disbelief by examining the underlying equations they create.
Okay.
For instance, it argues that stating God as the third of 3 is a theological error of the highest order.
Why is that?
Because mathematically, when you say the third of 3, you are placing God in a genus.
Oh.
You're making God a fraction of a set of equal possible things.
Right, so you were putting God on a shelf next to 2 other identical items.
Exactly.
You're saying here is God A, God B, and God C.
Yeah.
You are making God appear, which violates the proof of mutual hindrance we just talked about.
Yes. But the text contrasts this by stating that saying God is the third of 2 is an entirely different, completely acceptable mathematical and theological concept.
Wait, the third of 2?
Yeah, it references a moment where 2 people are hiding in a cave and God is described as being the third with them. In this context, God is not part of their set. God isn't a third human sitting in the cave taking up space.
Right.
God is the overarching, omnipresent observer and protector.
The distinction there is brilliant. Like, it is the difference between being a member of a company's board of directors where everyone has an equal vote versus being the completely untouchable owner of the entire company who just happens to be observing the room.
Right.
The owner is with the board but is not of the board.
Exactly. And this mathematical precision is mirrored by a grammatical precision.
Right.
When the text discusses the historical roots of polytheism, it locates the error in a subtle linguistic shift.
I haven't been able to stop thinking about this idea, honestly. It completely rewrites how we view ancient idolaters.
Yeah.
Like, the text argues that polytheism is at its core a grammar mistake.
Yeah, it's fascinating. When you look at the language of people who historically worship idols in that region, they didn't actually reject the supreme name Allah.
Wait, really?
Right. They knew who the supreme containerless creator was. Their error was in utilizing the indefinite noun ilah, which translates to a god with a lowercase g.
Oh, wow. So wait, so polytheists didn't actually deny a supreme creator.
No.
They weren't denying the boss at the top of the cosmic ladder. They just felt too small to talk to him directly.
Exactly.
They admitted they were only worshiping these lesser indefinite gods to get closer to the definite supreme god.
They felt unworthy or incapable of a direct line, the absolute uncontained nature of that first category was just too abstract for them.
Yeah.
So they took the concept of divinity and applied it as an indefinite noun.
Like a god of rain.
Right, a god of rain, a god of the harvest, a god of war, and using them as tangible stepping stones.
The tragic irony here is immense. Like, they were trying to build a physical staircase to something that, according to the 4 categories, takes up no space and needs no container.
Yeah.
You cannot build a physical staircase to something that doesn't exist within the dimensions of space.
You're just building a ladder into an empty sky.
Exactly.
Which perfectly explains how the text categorizes the idols they were building. It differentiates between dense idols and subtle idols.
Okay, what's the difference?
The dense idols are the obvious ones. The text calls them kasif. They statue carved out of stone or wood.
Yeah.
You can touch it, you can drop in it. It occupies physical volume.
But the text warns that the most dangerous idols are not the statues. They are the subtle idols, which it calls latif.
Yes.
And it metaphorically links the subtlest idol to air.
Right. Air is invisible. It surrounds us, we breathe it in without thinking, and it keeps us alive.
Yeah.
In this framework, air represents human desires, the ego, the invisible internal drives that dictate our minute-to-minute actions.
Oh, wow.
The text argues that making your own ego or your own desires into a god is the subtlest, most insidious form of polytheism.
Because you don't bow to a statue in a temple, but you bow completely to your own impulses in your mind.
Exactly. You make your own limited perspective the ultimate authority.
So we have established that our brains are easily hijacked by these subtle idols and that we are deeply prone to making these mathematical and grammatical errors.
Yeah.
This brings up a massive epistemological wall. Like, how can a flawed human mind ever hope to grasp that clean math without just projecting its own ego onto it?
Well, the text introduces a concept to address this that is frankly terrifying from a philosophical standpoint.
Okay.
It is called Aḥadiyyah, or absolute oneness. And the text states unequivocally that you cannot worship God from the standpoint of Aḥadiyyah.
Because absolute oneness means exactly that. Absolute.
Yes.
Singular.
Yes.
If God is experienced in the state of absolute oneness, nothing else can possibly exist.
Yeah.
If I exist to observe God, then there is God and there is me. That is 2 things.
Big
That is
power.
duality. So absolute oneness literally destroys the existence of the observer.
It annihilates the existence of the servant entirely.
Oh, man. If absolute oneness annihilates the observer, how does a mystic even attempt to practice their faith daily without losing their mind?
Yeah, you can't.
You can't function in a state of self-annihilation.
You cannot. Which is why the text argues that humans can only worship God through a different framework called rububiyyah, or lordship.
Lordship, okay.
Lordship intrinsically allows for a relationship. It requires a lord and it requires a servant.
Right.
It's a dualistic framework. It is a necessary concession that allows us to exist and interact with the divine without being vaporized by absolute singularity.
But because we are stuck in this dualistic framework of lordship, we run into a major cognitive blind spot.
We do.
The text points out that we can only ever describe God based on what we ourselves lack. It is all just human projection.
Right. A physical body, which is created and eventually degrades, looks at the divine and says, God is that which does not need a creator.
Yeah.
An atom, which exists in a specific location, looks at the divine and says, God is that which does not need a container.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We take our own limitations, we flip them upside down, and we call the inverse of our flaws God. It reminds me of an AI trying to explain human love.
That's a good comparison.
Right, like the AI can only describe love using its own vocabulary, so code algorithms processing efficiency.
Right.
It might output a definition like love is a high priority background process that prevents system shutdown and optimizes resource sharing.
Yeah.
The AI is trying so hard, but it completely misses the actual reality of the emotional experience because it is limited by its own silicon architecture.
Right.
We're trying to describe the infinite using a 3-pound lump of biological gray matter.
That AI analogy captures the exact dilemma Ibn al-Arabi is highlighting.
Wow.
Because of this severe limitation of our cognitive hardware, the text makes a very sharp distinction between faith and knowledge.
In most religious frameworks, faith is the pinnacle. But this text elevates knowledge over faith. How are they defining those 2 terms differently?
Well, faith in this specific philosophical context is defined as believing something because you heard a report.
Okay.
It relies on a messenger, a transmission of text. You hear it and you choose to accept it. But knowledge is described as a direct, necessary unveiling of truth in the heart.
I see.
It is an experiential reality. True monotheists in the text uses angels and profound scholars as examples possess this direct unveiling.
So if you don't have that direct unveiling and you just rely on your intellect to figure out God, what happens?
The text warns that if you only use your intellect will just build an idol out of thoughts.
Oh, wow.
You will worship your own clever concept of God rather than God himself.
Yeah.
This is why true religion, according to this framework, relies on the divine actively lowering itself.
Okay.
The divine uses human relatable concepts, describing itself as descending or sitting on a throne or being angry, just so our limited brains can grasp a fraction of the reality.
It's essentially divine translation. Like God has to speak baby talk to us using spatial metaphors for a containerless reality.
Yeah, it's an act of profound divine mercy to communicate in terms of duality and human emotion.
Right.
Because if the communication was delivered in the unvarnished language of Aḥadiyyah, we would simply cease to exist.
Wow, let's follow this thread of mercy, because we have painted a fairly bleak picture of human capability here.
We kind of have, yeah.
Like, we are stumbling around limited by our physical brains, making grammatical errors by praying to cosmic middlemen, projecting our own flaws onto the divine, and fighting the subtle idols of our own egos.
It's a lot.
How does anyone under this incredibly strict mathematical and logical framework actually achieve salvation?
Well, the final chapters address this by first tackling a very modern dilemma, the difference between sincerity and objective reality.
Like the concept of living your truth. It feels like a 21st century invention, but here it is being debated in an ancient manuscript.
Yeah, the text acknowledges that a polytheist might be entirely truthful and completely sincere in their belief.
Okay.
In their heart, they're not lying. They possess what the text calls sibq, or truthfulness.
Right.
But it argues that sincerity does not save you if it doesn't align with hak, which is objective reality.
You see that play out perfectly in how the text handles the example of backbiting or gossiping.
It is a brilliant ethical parallel.
Yeah.
If you gossip about someone's flaws, what you are saying might be 100% factually true.
Right.
You're exercising sidqi. You're being sincere and factual. But gossiping is still destructive, harmful, and morally wrong.
It does not align with the higher moral reality hack.
Exactly. Sincerity is not a free pass if you are sincerely aligned with something that fractures the unity of reality.
It makes a very rigorous distinction about how people fracture that reality. Like, it categorizes who is actually falling into polytheism versus who is just factually incorrect.
Yes.
It states that all polytheists are disbelievers, but not all disbelievers are polytheists.
This sorting mechanism is crucial for understanding Ibn al-Arabi's worldview.
Okay.
The text uses the example of people who believe a specific human being is God. It mentions the followers of the Messiah.
Right.
The text categorizes this as disbelief because it makes the category error we discussed earlier. It assigns absolute divinity to a limited human form, a category 2 body.
A body, right.
However, it explicitly says this is not polytheism, provided those people still claim there is only one God over all.
Oh, okay.
They are fundamentally wrong about who the one God is, but they haven't made the grammatical error of creating a pantheon of middlemen.
Man, after all this intense categorizing of who is wrong and exactly why they are wrong, the text asks a deeply poetic question.
Right.
Like, why did polytheism even start? Where did this cosmic amnesia come from, where we forgot the pure oneness of the first category?
The answer it gives is one of the most beautiful passages in the material.
Oh, yeah.
It says that when the universe was created, when it first came into being, it opened its eyes and saw itself alongside God.
It opened its eyes and saw itself.
Because the universe existed, it immediately experienced duality. It saw God and it saw itself.
Right.
Therefore, from the very first millisecond of creation, the universe could not experience pure absolute oneness.
Wow.
Duality was baked into the very fabric of existence. We are born into a universe that by its very ontological nature obscures the absolute singularity of God.
Okay, so if duality is baked into our existence and absolute oneness destroys us, are we just doomed to fail the test?
Sounds like it.
Like, how does a single human ever overcome an obstacle that is literally woven into the fabric of the cosmos?
This brings us to the ultimate saving grace found in the final chapter of our source text called al-Visaya.
Okay.
After pages and pages of uncompromising logic, strict definitions of disbelief, and the terrifying reality of Aḥadiyyah, Ibn al-Arabi delivers a message of profound, sweeping empathy.
Interesting.
He warns his readers against bearing enmity toward anyone who declares there is no God but God.
Right, the Arabic phrase, la ilaha illallah.
Exactly. He says that God grants anyone who utters this a general sainthood.
A general sainthood,
Yeah.
regardless of their other flaws.
Yes.
But how does that actually work mechanically? How does a single phrase override a lifetime of errors?
It comes down to Ibn al-Arabi's theology of divine mercy outweighing divine wrath. The text explicitly says that even if a person makes mistakes the size of the earth, even if their theology is messy, their intellect is flawed, they fall prey to subtle idols, and their actions are lacking,
Right.
that single sincere declaration of unity possesses infinite ontological weight.
Oh, wow.
Human errors are finite. They belong to the realm of creation. The declaration of oneness connects to the infinite reality of God.
I see.
Therefore, that single phrase will take them by the hand on Judgment Day and save them, because the infinite always absorbs the finite.
So what does this all mean? Like, it is the ultimate philosophical plot twist.
It really is.
We started with two co-CEOs crashing a car to prove mutual hindrance.
Yeah.
We built the atomic structure of the number one. We dissected the fatal grammar of idolatry, and we confronted the terrifying reality of an infinite God that our 3-pound brains cannot comprehend without projecting our own flaws.
Right.
We proved that human beings are essentially hardwired by the cosmic amnesia of the universe to get this wrong.
The architecture of our reality guarantees that we will struggle with it.
But then it ends on a note of radical grace.
Yeah.
It recognizes our profound cognitive limitations. It knows we're trying to measure the infinite with a broken ruler.
Exactly.
And it says the mere attempt to acknowledge the one, just pointing your compass in the right direction, despite all the static, the noise, and the mathematical errors, is enough to save you.
Because the reality of that oneness is so powerful, it covers all your earthly mistakes.
It is a stunning synthesis, like it builds an uncompromising fortress of logic only to open a door of boundless mercy right at the center of it.
It's beautiful.
But before we leave this philosophical landscape, let's pull on one final thread.
Sure.
We discussed that moment. The universe opened its eyes and saw itself alongside God, creating the origin of duality.
Right. The fundamental barrier to experiencing Aḥadiyyah.
The implication there is staggering. Like, the text suggests that because the universe saw itself, it couldn't experience pure oneness.
Yeah.
This means that as long as you exist as a conscious observer, true, absolute oneness is impossible to fully grasp.
The observer paradox. The very act of you looking at God confirms that there are two things in the room.
So if the intellect itself is the barrier and your own existence is the thing creating the duality, is the ultimate pursuit of divine knowledge, actually a journey toward unbeing.
Oh, wow.
Like, we spend our whole lives trying to learn more, to accumulate more data, to refine our grammar and our math, to build a sharper intellect so we can finally understand reality.
Right.
But if the observer is the obstacle, is the true quest, not to learn more, but to eventually somehow disappear entirely into the reality you were trying to study.
If the presence of the self is the only thing obscuring the absolute, then the ultimate act of knowing would require the complete dissolution of the knower.
Something to mull over the next time you point to a coffee cup and think counting to one is simple.